Welcome back, Red Spotters. Another show in the Red Spotlight podcast. I'm your host today, Alexis J. Soto, joined by my very good friend, Mr. David Francisco. We are back with our weekly WandaVision recaps, the current Marvel Studios show streaming on Disney Plus, which has seemingly caught the imagination of the world. I can't imagine anyone out there who has an outlet like we do is not talking about this show. It is the talk of the town. It is the talk of the world. And as we have been for every single week, we're back here. Our previous episodes, we've covered, 1 through 6 now. And here we're talking about episode 7, titled Breaking the Fourth Wall. In the immediate aftermath of the events of episode 6, which in and of themselves were jaw-dropping. So that's our episode today on Red Spotlight number 302. Before we start, I do have a couple of plugs to get out of the way with. Of course, Red Spotlight just had its 300th episode. I think all of us considered it to be kind of a milestone, and we all came together, everybody on the panel here, including Peter and Kyle and Alexis, as well as David and I, to celebrate the occasion. It is currently live on the podcast feed, and so far, I mean, everybody that was on the show seemed to have enjoyed it quite a bit, so I encourage you all to listen to that, as well as, of course, the return of To the Table. Peter and I sat down and did reviews of some 2 old films, old-ish as in the early 2000s, for the theme of Feel Good February. We talked about Secondhand Lions and The Majestic with Jim Carrey. And we have plenty of more content heading your way. And Kyle, as a matter of fact, has informed me that we are now on 2 new platforms for podcasts. In addition to obviously being on Apple and Spotify, YouTube, and CastBox, as well as some other smaller markets, we're also available on Google Podcasts as well as iHeartRadio for the first time. So thank you, Kyle Lira, for putting us on those. Just more ways for you to stream our podcasts. We're also very appreciative for those of you who are out there listening, whether it be in South Africa or in the UK, depending on whatever analytics that Kyle has access to, and he's informed me that evidently we have some listeners in those regions. So thank you for, seemingly liking what we have to say here. And of course, and always putting up for my shit that I like to, overindulge in, it seems like, on this show. And I think that's it. Just keep an eye out for more content. We have a lot of things coming your way. We have, in the coming month, many reviews, whether it be with Tom and Jerry, Raya and the Last Dragon, Zack Snyder's cut of the Justice League, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Godzilla vs. Kong. A lot of really big, heavy content coming at once for the first time in a long time. So we're all, happy about that. I just had my phone interrupt me, which is usually what happens at the very beginning of the show, because I've just received a message from someone on the panel. It seemed like Kyle Lira just messaged me. So, hey, it wouldn't be a show if I wasn't completely cut off by my phone, and I always forget to turn it on silent. Anyway, David, how are you doing today? How has your week been, and how excited are you to talk about today's episode?
I've been good. This week, I rewatched the episode, and although that ending was really good, the episode was fine. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, I don't know, something about it kind of maybe just a lot of, I really don't know how to describe it. It was just fine, really.
Okay. And look, we have, as we like to do these reviews, we will get into the episode, we will have an official description, and of course we'll have a spoiler warning. But before the fan, and perhaps I may want to issue that spoiler warning just now, because we're going to get into, before we get into the reviews, talk about the conversation being had online, right? What's being talked about in the trades and the media. It's just some new pieces that are out there in a new segment that I like to call Takes of the Week about WandaVision. David and I have very much been enjoying this show, and as we seemingly live on Twitter, or at least I live on Twitter, there are a lot of things that you run into, and that's why we're doing Takes of the Week. But there actually, I feel it's not so much a bitch fest where I'm going to be sitting here and like screaming at people for having an opinion. It's not about that. It's more so about having a back and forth. And Peter, and excuse me, not Peter, David's the better Peter, might have a rather interesting and perhaps maybe even divisive back and forth in terms of how we feel about these takes. But I found it to be interesting, and I think perhaps indicative of what the masses may be thinking right now as they're watching WandaVision. So I'm gonna go ahead and get into the first one that I have here, and it's just straight to the point, because seemingly everybody is either complaining about this reality or upset that they have to feel upset because it's this way. And what I am referring to is the fact that WandaVision, the average length of the episodes have been around 30 minutes on the shorter side, maybe as close to 40 minutes on the longer side. I do want to make a clarification because some people do not seem to be aware. When you watch the show on Disney Plus, you have to be aware that 7 to 8 minutes of the overall runtime are for the credits. Why are the credits so freakishly long? Well, that is because they have to have all of the dubbing actors, all of the credits to all of the different subsidiaries that do the dubbing for the shows internationally. So that's what happens usually, as was the case, I believe, also for The Mandalorian as well. So that shouldn't have been a surprise, but it seemingly has caught people off guard, but that is the truth there. And so just automatically take 8 to 9 minutes off the overall runtime you see. But that is true that for the most part, 30 to 35 minutes maybe is a better way of saying how long the episodes have been. Mm-hmm. At the same time, perhaps the frustration could have been amplified by the fact that there was some fake news being, well, that just sounded like Trump, but it's true though. I mean, some fake news being like spread around that evidently Kevin Feige at some point, or someone at Marvel, had seemingly, quote unquote, confirmed that the last 3 episodes are going to be an hour in length. Clearly that was not true. Mm-hmm. Many people didn't actually, most people, I think, were a little bit trepidatious about that kind of news when it was being spread around, because it just didn't seem right, and lo and behold, it really wasn't all that accurate. But what's being discussed, obviously, is, are the episodes too short? David?
I mean, honestly, that's really hard to say if whether they're too short or not. It's just it's just about the reveals, or the cliffhangers. That's really all it is about. Because like one show that we really wanted to see the next episode was The Good Place. And again,
oh yeah,
one's cable, one's streaming, very different shows and all that. But like I said last week, is that in The Good Place there was a beginning, a middle, and an end. Like there was character development
and a cliffhanger
and a cliffhanger, yes. But there was also character development, some big reveals that like. And the cliffhangers, yeah, they're supposed to make you excited for the week after, but they're also, I don't know, I don't like the idea of just kind of being frustrated, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's over. But because again, with The Good Place, big beginning, middle, of end, character development. With WandaVision, I think this is why this episode is kind of just okay with me, because there wasn't much development going on. Because at least in the first episode, even though it had really nothing to do with like the overall story, I like the idea that they were supposed to have like a normal dinner with guests, and it was just all going wrong and everything, and that was fun. Oh shoot! Dang it! 1 minute. I'm so sorry.
We have some mic issues there. It's okay. This happens all the time. But yeah, I can definitely see your point that in this case. But at the same time, I also believe you are, entirely correct. I mean, The Good Place was very much, 22 minutes an episode, if that? Mm-hmm. And, I mean, no one seemingly complained there. Of course, we're talking about, a very different show and a very different, I believe, genre, if you want to consider it that. But, I mean...
It still had, like, a weird concept, just like WandaVision, though.
Sure,
so, like,
yeah.
I'm sure you can pull some similarities to it, but I was trying to say with this episode though, it's just there really wasn't much going on. Like, yeah, we finally get Vision getting answers that he wanted, like he finally knows everything, and that's exciting and all that. But they didn't really do much with it. It was just, okay, I died and all that. And then with Wanda, I mean, she was just kind of in the house. She was literally just in the house. What is it? House prison or house jail, whatever.
She called it a quarantine staycation, which I think hit far too home for a lot of us who have been locked indoors for about a year. That's what she called it. I
was going to say quarantine, but I'm like, no, that's not it.
No, she said it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, there just wasn't much with this episode.
Okay, but this episode notwithstanding, usually, though, let's say last week or the week before that, did you feel that same way? As far as the runtime of the overall episode was concerned?
No.
So you're not usually somebody who is upset by the seemingly 30-minute runtime of this series?
No, I was saying, like, a runtime, it doesn't really matter about the show. It's just, it all depends on what the story is of that episode. And that really, to me at least, that really is the frustration people are having. They're blaming the runtime, but that's not really it. It was just they written the episode in a certain way that just makes you frustrated in the end.
Yeah. That's interesting though. I guess I feel a little bit differently about the overall episode this week, but I mean, not necessarily that much. Maybe perhaps I was a little bit more enthusiastic. I have a couple of different takes on this week's episode, because I definitely did, I think, view it twice, or I don't remember, either twice or 3 times. But in general, this conversation about episode length I find to be just weird. It's I don't know. I guess I don't base how good something is going to be. Well, I guess I don't feel cheated if I know the runtime before or after. Like, unlike you, I don't particularly feel like this episode offered. Well, I mean, maybe it did offer less than the previous episodes, but I still don't feel as if I was, I don't know, stunted or, cut off way too short before it ended. Like, especially with the last 3 episodes, it didn't surprise me when it ended because you could see it coming a mile away.
Oh yeah, that's been the running joke of people being like, it's
I know, shocked.
It's Agnes, and all that, and then the reveal, they're like, oh my god, it's Agnes. It's just like,
yeah.
It's a halfway thing of like, we're surprised that it is, but at the same time they're not, and it's a stupid thing.
I mean, the reveals themselves, we can talk about that, but I mean, I can pick up a few minutes before the episode ends that, okay, this is we're wrapping up here, and that's going to be the end of this week. Mm-hmm. A lot of people seemingly are so invested, and that's a good thing. We want people to be invested, obviously, into the show, but a lot of people are so sucked into what they're seeing that they're completely taken aback when it cuts to credits, which is always hilarious to me when I watch reactions. But yeah, that's not really an issue for me overall as far as this series is concerned. I mean, when you think about I guess because we're in a different age of television, and because streaming obviously has and the binge watch model has taken hold, you could definitely see how younger audiences are much more accustomed to maybe episode or shows of this caliber, of this notoriety, being closer to an hour in length, and then also watching it all at once, which is clearly not what's happening here. Mm-hmm. So much so that, some people are seemingly convinced that Disney Plus invented the model of releasing things week to week, which, of course, that's just hysterical to me. But again, The Mandalorian had the exact same. Maybe The Mandalorian on average had a 40-minute runtime, but it still wasn't an hour. I think the longest episode of The Mandalorian is I think season 2 was maybe 55 minutes, but it wasn't an hour.
But the thing that, like I said, that show though, again, it did have a beginning, middle, and end. You had the episode.
Ended up. We. I mean, this is just me piping in here, but we started in the same place and ended in the same place every week. But I mean, literally, but you're right though. I mean, I guess you could say there's a beginning, middle, and end to every week.
Way.
Yeah.
I mean, there isn't one in the overall story, but there was one in the episode. Like, you had to get that lizard lady to another planet. They just get sidetracked and all that, blah, blah, blah. But they made it out. That's the episode. The next one, he's there, finds another side quest. That side quest is done by the end of the episode. And that's what makes it satisfying and gets you slightly excited for the next episode. Because it's not so much like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? Is this? Like, I want answers. It's more just, oh, I can't wait for next week. And that's it. It's not as exciting, but again, if you like the episode, you'll be there for the next one.
Let me ask you this question here. What do you think is driving this runtime, the average runtime of episodes? If we're going to go ahead and humor this criticism, is it budget or is it just from a creative decision?
It could be budget, maybe, because how much did they spend? Like $200 million an episode, or something.
Not
like
on Mandalore. I mean, no. Those are astronomical numbers. We're $200 million an episode. That's crazy. No, Mandalorian, for comparison's sake, had a budget of $10 million an episode. Mm-hmm. That on television, that's on the higher end of the scale. The last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones, for comparison's sake, had a budget of $10 million an episode. No show will ever be made for $200 million. That's an insane amount of money. That's all right. Don't worry. But it's a good thing to clarify that. WandaVision, I am not so sure. I have to think that on the surface, they saved a lot of money on WandaVision, because yes, as we've established with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it is costly to do, period. I mean, like 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, the clothing, the hair, the makeup, the sets. While that may not seem expensive, it can be from a TV budget standpoint. The VFX are movie quality. There's no question about that. Mm-hmm. I think it definitely does cost a pretty penny to put this show out there. But I don't think, at least from my vantage point, it doesn't seem anywhere near as expensive as The Mandalorian from a just production standpoint. Mm-hmm. At least that's just how I see it. I also have to think that, it could be a budget reason. Perhaps that could be a good way to save some money. But I also have to remind people, this whole show is very much taking full throttle of the sitcom format. What's the usual runtime for sitcoms? 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. Could be that. And as a sitcom, in the sitcom-heavy episodes, I think it's more than delivered. So it could just be that. I don't know. There really isn't a definitive, I think, answer to the question. We're just spitballing here. And again, it's not really a particular concern for us, but it seems like a lot of people are just obsessed with the runtime. Even still, people are making a big deal about how long the last 2 episodes. And I'm sure it's because, look, there's a lot to get to. We want to make sure that the show wraps everything up nicely. And the show is it's earning a lot of goodwill that people want to see more of it, sure. But at the end of the day, I don't live and die on how long an episode's going to be. It's not how long it's not how long your content is, how you use that time. Really, more importantly, is I think the answer here. So I think we've had enough to say on that. Let's go ahead and move on to my other thing here. And this may I don't know, feature perhaps some more commentary here. So this is a different question that I've been seeing from some online, obviously. Has the show become too much or more of an MCU procedural? And these are the observations that I've made. So Marvel stans, that's what they call themselves on Twitter. Marvel stans love the sword elements of the show, labeling, the dynamic duo, the dynamic trio of Wu, Darcy, and Monica. I've even seen some of them call them a trinity. Interesting. So much so that enough interest was generated for a potential spinoff. And Marvel Studios recently held a pitch meeting. Somebody pitched them a spinoff concept for a Wu and Darcy show, it seems like. That's how much a part of, I guess, the love of WandaVision has been like, which is interesting because that's just not at all how I feel like it, but I'll get to that in a bit. However, casual Marvel fans and even self-described Marvel detractors, people who are not necessarily all that into the MCU, and the kind of person that seemingly seems to be is film critic types, perhaps those who are far more into indies. I don't mean to discriminate based on taste, but that just seems to be how I'm being able to define the lines between the film critic indie fan types and then also the MCU stan types. So they feel, the other side of it, that the sword storyline has significantly reduced interest in the show. I have some examples here. JD Wenzel writes, at JD Wenzel, where I loved the first few episodes because it was a pastiche to all the shows I'd watch with my mom as a kid, from Lucille Ball melodrama to the Bewitched aesthetics. But now it's just generic Marvel plotting structure plus police procedural narrative. That's what he says. I have a different perspective here, although it's more along the same lines. Film critic Robert Daniels, he's written for IGN among other sources, writes, "The great thing about WandaVision for me, initially, was that it felt so self-contained. And while I knew MCU events would enter into the fray, I don't need half of the connections and reveals they're trying. The Monica character feels especially forced. I much prefer the first 3 to 4 episodes, which were more about Wanda's grief, where she played a central role, than having this connect to a grander MCU web. Let something be modest and focused for once." So I think that right there can definitely give you a little bit of a sense of the divide among certain fans of this show. And let me, there's just a lot to what I just said, a lot to filter through. And I was very mixed because both of those points of view are very polarizing. I wasn't exactly 100% in each of the corners here. So I made a list of what I agree with and don't agree with. And then I'm going to go ahead and throw it back to you, David, to get, and I don't envy your task. There's a lot of things I just said, but hey, that's usually your job here, is to just see if you can decipher what we're talking about here. So here's how I feel. I agree that the best elements on the show are the homages to the sitcom genre. I agree with the comparison made between the sword storyline and it feeling like police procedurals. And I agree that it is by far, for me, the least interesting aspect of the show. I agree with the frustration that everything in the MCU has to be so interconnected to the point where nothing can be isolated and standalone. But so far, that has not been an issue on WandaVision for me. It's a little bit of a distinction. I agree with the overall critique that the MCU doesn't need to always be interconnected, but as far as how it's being handled so far on WandaVision, it has not bothered me. I want to make that very clear. That's not an issue for me. I agree that I don't need reveals and connections like Evan Peters or the aerospace scientists or mutants, but just to reiterate, but so far they've all been handled so well that it's not been a problem. It's only just added to the entertainment for me. I can understand how Monica's origin story in regards to, getting her powers might cause some to roll their eyes in annoyance, but I'm not of the mind that Monica's presence is forced. She clearly is a major player in Wanda's overall story arc. So there, I did my best to kind of weed through the differences there in terms of like where I fall. I guess you could say maybe I fall in between those two extremes there. But I have to ask you, what do you make of this overall divide or division in how certain people are looking at it, and whether or not your overall thoughts on these takes on the extremes?
So, even though it is leading to like an MCU procedural type of thing, it's still very different from the other movies that we've seen, because because for me, like MCU procedural means like epic battle in the end. I'm not talking about like two heroes or the hero and the villain. I'm talking like giant battle, multiple people fighting and all that. Like that's what I'm thinking of MCU procedural.
Any third act in a Marvel movie. Yeah,
basically. And so with this one though, I feel like it is going to be contained in a way. Okay. Because I mean, most of it is series, but then also just because, again, even though they're getting movie budget, it's still a show. I don't think they're gonna want to do anything big for this type of thing, And so that's kind of my take. I don't think it's, even though it doesn't bother me that it's going through a MCU procedural type of thing of like revealing a big villain, like you're gonna have a villain to fight against, because I mean it's a superhero comic. I know some superhero comics, they actually do deal with like a psychological type of effect, which the show could have done, but at the same time though, there's always a big bad in the end.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It just doesn't. I don't think it does.
I think some people like Peter maybe did not fully understand where I was coming from last week, because he asked me after the episode ended if I was upset because they seemingly revealed a big bad. That wasn't the point I was making. I think because some people were like complaining about the fact that others were like, well, why does it need to have a big bad? I wasn't saying that it didn't have to have a big bad. I didn't say that I would be upset that it would have a big bad. I'm just saying that it definitely can have the space for both, It can have a big bad tied thematically into the overall Wanda storyline of grief. That is what most likely I feel is happening here and what's going to be unveiled soon. But I guess the frustration on people from my side was that the interest only ever seemed to be on the part of Marvel stans, as we like to call them, on who the big bad's going to be on the big reveal. That's driving a lot of the traffic. That's driving a lot of the conversation. Not so much on how well the show is exploring Wanda's grief. I'm not saying it can be an either or. I mean, perhaps you can make an argument that it would be better if we just didn't have a villain and just be Wanda's grief. But at the end of the day, you're you're right. It's a superhero show. I don't know what you would have expected. So I wasn't making the case that the show should not have a big bad. I was merely just trying to say, hey, guys, we're going to get there, but appreciate the fact that this show is not just about that. And it's doing some pretty awesome things with Wanda and the story that it's trying to tell there. That's where I was coming from.
Yeah.
Perhaps I should have made myself clearer on that, but Peter seems to have a pretty interesting history of misunderstanding me sometimes. I just wanted to clarify that point. With that. Yeah, but I do feel the love for Wu and Darcy and Monica. Look, it's a bit much for my taste. I can understand people like loving them as personalities, but they're mostly just personalities. They're not really full-on characters. They're, what does Peter say? The epidemic of the likable character syndrome. They're likable personalities. Maybe Monica's the closest to a full-fledged character. We'll see. We're getting to that point. That's no disrespect to Randall Park. That's no disrespect to Kat Dennings. I think they're doing a great job, and I enjoy their presence. That isn't to say that I don't, but the idea, and then this is the part where people are saying that it's becoming too much of an MCU procedural, is the sword stuff, the police, which are, they kind of are the police, and they are the agency, they are the, I guess, quote unquote spies here in a sense. The stand-in for S.H.I.E.L.D. and that feeling a little bit much like other Marvel movies, perhaps. I think that's the closest where I can understand that point of view. But at the same time, there's a little bit of truth in that, because I've been noticing as I've been monitoring the Twitters, as they say, that a lot of people really do. Well, actually, I don't even have to. I mean, a lot of the studies do back this up. That episode 4, when this whole dynamic was introduced, is when people felt as if, oh, now I can care about this because now you've given me a reason to care, which I personally find a little bit upsetting, because I think there was enough in the first few episodes, in the first 2 episodes especially, to get you invested. But as we've discussed, with the streaming charts that have come out through Nielsen, initially people were a little bit cold on the show, and it really wasn't until episode 4 or 5 that the show really exploded. So again, there's certain facts to back up that, in particular, a lot of Marvel stans. And look, I'm not saying that you're wrong for liking that, but I just want to make sure people are aware where the frustration and the part of, in people like me, where that's coming from. And that is, I'm just a little bit upset that people don't seem to value the character stuff. It is Wanda and Vision's show, after all. It's Wanda's show. Monica's playing a big part. But I agree with Peter when he says anytime Sword is coming up on the episodes, I feel like my interest is just nearly plummeting. I like it. I'm not saying it's terrible. I'm not saying it's bad. But as far as interest levels going up and down, when they're on screen, I'm less interested. So that's where I'm coming from, though.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm uninterested about the sword stuff.
I'm not uninterested. I'm just less interested than
my bad.
The other things.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I'm not like I don't get less interested when the sword stuff comes up. I actually like the sword stuff, not as much as Wanda, but
right.
I don't know. It's just kind of weird. Like, what is it? Darcy and Jimmy.
Right.
Wait, that's a character name, right?
That's yes, Jimmy and Darcy.
Jimmy and Darcy, like, yeah, they're really, really entertaining, and that's kind of like, that's partly why I do get excited about the sword stuff. But that's all they are. They're just like, in a way, they're sort of the comedic relief.
Sure, yeah.
Of the show, because I mean, yes, they're the Wanda's world. It's all comedy and all that, but there's some pretty scary, dark stuff that happens every once in a while. It's like, and some of the jokes, like, I think aren't supposed to land as much because they're just supposed to be weird, and so that's why Jimmy and Darcy are there.
Let me tell you what it is. I do not mean to come across as if I'm not entertained when they're on screen.
No,
I'm not hating it, and I know that's not what you're saying. But just to clarify a couple of things, but I think part of and this is why really episode 4 is my least favorite episode, because it's really all of them. While a good episode, let me remind people, I liked that episode quite a bit, and I thought it was really good. But mostly the sword stuff is all exposition.
Mm-hmm.
That's never going to be as interesting on rewatch as what's going on with Wanda or the sitcom trope for me. Maybe that's what's driving it at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But in the moment, sure, it's good.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we can leave that there. Maybe we can come back to it when we get into the episode. Paul Bettany gave an interview again this week. This is just for entertainment purposes, but he's teasing a big character reveal coming to the show. He clarified that it was not Evan Peters that he was referring to, and he further clarified that it was not Doctor Strange. He said that this is an actor that he's always wanted to work with. Some article was speculating, and it was a legit source. Excuse me. This is a legit publication, and this was speculation. This was not sourced. This was not rumored, nor was it presented as such. It was just this writer speculating certain things. But this person, interestingly, was thinking maybe it's Al Pacino, because Al Pacino had a meeting with Marvel in 2014. And Al Pacino is an actor that Paul Bettany has always wanted to work with. That's the reason. But they're obviously spitballing here.
Yeah.
I mean, and apparently, like, Al Pacino played some kind of devil character in some other thing, and like maybe they were like saying maybe he could be Mephisto. I don't think that's happening. I don't know who the reveal is. I don't know if I care really, but I mean, I guess there's a reveal coming. How do you feel about that?
I don't know. Like I said it before, like I just feel like they're just kind of accidentally hyping it up.
Right.
Just to get fans interested, but I feel like the reveal's not gonna be much. I don't know.
I think it's good. I think it's good to keep your expectations low, because when we get to a certain part of this episode, I know a lot of people were very disappointed about a certain quote unquote reveal.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I mean, it just could be that. I don't know. I don't really trust any type of news site, whatever the actors say, because again, they're just promoting stuff. They spitball whatever and and just people take it out of proportion, like what happened with this episode.
Yeah. No, I get that. So let's go ahead and talk about the episode.
Yeah.
So, breaking the fourth wall. This is episode 7 of WandaVision. And, it starts off immediately after the events of what happened last week, where Wanda expanded the borders of the Hex. And we start off her basically waking up, remembering the events of last night. And yeah, well, maybe I jumped the gun a little bit there. Let me backtrack a little bit. I really liked this episode, and I, for the most part, found the reason why basically this episode was made for me was because it was doing the Modern Family thing. I love Modern Family. Mm-hmm. I unfortunately have not been able to finish the show because it wasn't available anywhere on streaming. I had fallen off around season 7, but then I saw that Hulu had all the seasons, so like that's my next binge watch, because I have not had the chance to finish that series, and this episode definitely made me want to go back and watch the show. But yeah, this is the 2010s era of sitcom, the mockumentary style, very much inspired by Modern Family. The set in and of itself was literally out of Modern Family. The living room, the kitchen, the colors. Interestingly enough, the opening sequence was kind of a marrying between The Office. The Office theme song was clearly an inspiration for the theme. And as far as the opening credits are concerned, like the actual visual sequence, evidently it was inspired by a lesser known sitcom called Happy Endings, which the showrunner of WandaVision previously worked on. So a little bit of a, homage to that previous show. But definitely very fun. And let me say this. I thought this episode was hilarious. I mean, we started off with Wanda, and oh my God, Elizabeth Olsen is okay. Overall, I think you liked the episode, David. Probably not as much as other episodes.
It was fine.
It was fine. I really liked it. So that's the overall impressions. Elizabeth Olsen channeling some strong Julie Bowen energy here. If you've seen Modern Family, if you've seen Claire Dunphy, Wanda was straight up Claire Dunphy. I mean, straight up, and look, I think that's honestly, those are the moments that made me laugh the hardest. Let me see if I can recall them there. So, in the beginning, where she's like talking to the camera, we've all been there, right? Just to, extending the borders of the reality we made. And then we cut to, in a hilarious montage, just the sword agents running for their lives as the vortex is about to suck them in with the Modern Family, comedy music. It was amazing. It's amazing. It was perfect.
It was a funny cut to it. And you could just hear them screaming in the background too.
Oh boy, no, yeah, that's the gold of Modern Family humor. So yeah, that definitely spoke to me. But even just damn, I appreciate it as somebody who perhaps has been a little careless, flippant, and cold in interactions with young children, in terms of maybe saying some things that were maybe too dark for their age. I definitely related to her frustration with how she was treating her kids this episode. The kids come up, Billy and Tommy come up, and Billy's like, my head's hurting, and Wanda's basically like, the fuck do I care? Get away from me. I mean, basically, she didn't say that, but it was like, I'm just trying to rest my eyes. Get the fuck away, please. It's just, I loved it. I loved it. The fact that she was sleeping in her costume from the night before, that all worked so well for me. And even when she's she has her cereal and she's going to the living room and she says things to the kids and the kids are just completely caught off guard by some of the things that she says, that the camera zooms in on them. And I love particularly Billy's reactions. He's giving this really weird, he's giving this really hilarious facial reaction, looking directly at the camera. Did she just say that? What is she saying? Because Wanda is you as, I as your mother, you expect me to have all the answers. Well, I don't. Zero, nada, yet, whatever she says. It's not niet, it's niente, I think, is what she said. I think maybe it's Sokovian, I'm not sure.
She actually said that?
I think niente, I think. Yeah, I don't think it's niet. Niet is Russian, I believe. And she, at a certain point, she asks, no, I don't think, does she, or did the kids ask where Vision is?
No, she asked, and then the son asked, do you want us, should we go look for him? And she's just like, nah, whatever.
No, she literally, this is straight up shade. All of us, so I was watching this with Peter and Alexis in real time, and we all felt the shade where she was like, well, if he doesn't want to be here, there's nothing I can do about it. I was a bit fucking cold right there, and I think that implies that she's pissed off. She's a little butthurt that Vision tried to escape. Like, what the fuck, man? I did all this shit for you. I created reality. I brought you back to life, and you tried to get the fuck away? I mean, come on. This is too funny. I know it's sad and it's dark, but like this is where the humor really works for me. And then where it really got me was, when she was kind of, she was lashing out a little bit because they asked about Uncle Pietro, and then she was like, that man is not your uncle, which he was conspicuously missing the entire episode. I think we kept questioning, where is he? Where is he? What happened? We have an answer to that later on. And then she literally says to her 10-year-old kids, I am starting to realize that everything is meaningless. That's just where I don't, and then she says to them, you can draw your own conclusions, but that's just where I'm at.
I did like that line though, where she goes, "Oh, come on, their dad's made of vibranium. They literally have tough skin." That was great.
No, man, Olsen was just killing it. She was killing it already from those early moments. But before we get off that part, a couple of things to note here. So, did you notice that in her bed sheets, or at least the covers that she was in the upstairs bedroom, that they were all hexagonal shaped? They keep putting that in there in the smallest of ways. There's a lot of great subtleties. And obviously, clearly, from the first couple of moments, the hex is seemingly glitching like it never has before. Certain items are, reverting back to older time periods. She picks up the almond milk, and then it ends up being like it goes through like different iterations of like milk cartons, I guess you could say. Some people were pointing attention to the fact that one of the milk cartons had a missing kid. Maybe they were trying to like draw connections between that and Agatha or Agnes, who has a child in the comics. I don't know if, it could just be a throwaway thing, but maybe that's what it was. But yeah, overall, Wanda is realizing as she's in the kitchen that things are going haywire, and then she hilariously says to the camera, like, all of us like are thinking, oh, Wanda, what are you doing? And then she's like, yeah, I don't really know what that's about. So I know some people were like, maybe they weren't overly thrilled with the sitcom concept of this week. Maybe they weren't as impressed, and I don't think it's the best of the bunch, but I really liked all the stuff that they were going for. And then enters in Agnes, always at the most convenient times, and oh god, Catherine Hahn is a treasure. She is just a treasure. The lines that she serves out are just, they're too dangerous because you might even die of laughter. She's like, oh, come on, kids, I don't bite. And then it cuts to, I did bite a kid once, with like this gleeful smile on her face. Everybody was cracking up about that as well. But she offers to take the kids off Wanda's hands. Wanda's like, oh yes, please get them the fuck away from me. Please hurry up. Get out of here. Literally, she could not get them out of that house fast enough. And many seem to be thinking, well, maybe that's what Agnes wanted, was just permission from Wanda to take the kids away. Probably. Considering what happens.
I've got crazy theories about Agnes, so once we get there, like...
Yeah, interestingly, she says... I know this probably is completely throwaway and just like a humorous sitcom example, but she asked Wanda to look at her back for what she calls a suspicious mole. A suspicious mole. Think back to Agent Coulson, right? When he realized that a certain somebody was Hydra, and he said, we've had a wolf in the herd the whole time. I don't know, some people were saying, was Agnes trying to give Wanda a tease about what was to come? What was the point of that? Or was it nothing?
Again, this is leading to the whole people are taking things way out of proportion. And I don't mind if I'm wrong about this. Like, I don't care. It's just kind of like, it's it could be part of the comedy thing, because that's a running joke in all comedy. It's like, oh, I got this sting on my back. Can you look at it? And so I don't know. It's just calm down, people.
Right. Maybe it was something more for the audience than for the characters. It could just have been in that, telegraphing what was happening there. One other thing to mention, I skipped past this, but in the opening sequence, evidently there was a close-up of a driver's plate that had Stan Lee's birthday on it.
Oh, yeah. I heard about that. And you said the
intro.
Opening.
Yeah.
Yes, I saw that. That's cool.
That's nice. Stan Lee is alive, and he gets to have a cameo some way.
That's his cameo.
That's his cameo.
I just noticed that there is no cameo. Oh my god.
What with Stan Lee?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's no longer with us.
I know, but like, it just literally just hit me like, oh yeah, we're not gonna see him in this. Huh.
Yeah, but look, that's one way to keep him alive, for sure.
That's cool.
So then we cut to the stuff happening with Sword. Hayward is done with this whole situation, and I believe he said something akin to get the thing ready or something.
Oh, he's like ready to blow up the place or something.
Right. Like, isn't that the impression you're getting? Like, he's about to nuke that place? Like,
Probably.
he's done.
Yeah.
And then we see Monica and Jimmy, and they're driving toward a mystery person. But before we get to that, it ends up being fairly confirmed, right, that we had suspected a few weeks back that Hayward was up to no good, when it's revealed that Darcy found the file that she was looking for, and that is that Director Hayward was trying to bring Vision back to life, it seemed like.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's surprising that they actually went with it, but at the same time it's not, because we saw it coming.
Yeah, it seemed fairly obvious, but that was a good one that we called early on. And then they arrive at a particular campsite. You see people in military garb, and I remember this moment. Again, I was watching this episode in real time with Alexis Moreno and with Peter Martinez, and we were all like, this is it. This is the big reveal. And we were referring to, as you may have heard in our previous episodes, about who it was, the aerospace scientist that Monica had been, I think she mentioned this person twice, at least. And everyone, because I think what happened is The Mandalorian has conditioned us to just expect the obvious. The obvious in the sense that, oh, they're teasing something, so let's just go ahead and think or predict that it's the most outlandish, big thing reveal ever, a la Luke Skywalker, and then it'll be right. Well, this show clearly does not think like The Mandalorian, and I think that's good for WandaVision. Because if this was The Mandalorian, those Reed Richards theories would have been 100% accurate, and that's what would have happened. But that's not what happened, and it ended up being this no-name. And I have to say, I found it hilarious. Just like, ha, they got us good. At least that was... Yes, go ahead.
The thing, though, is that... Wait, are you talking about the fan theorist or Marvel? That they're like, who got us?
We got ourselves. I don't think Marvel got anybody. I think
that's what I want to say, because I remember when I first saw the episode where she goes, "Oh, I got a friend who's like down to like test this out or something. I don't know what her exact line is, but she mentions like her friend. When she said that, I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, you're gonna go back in. That's great. That was my thought. That's it. That she's gonna go back in. Everyone else was just like, who's her friend? Is it Richard? Is it this? And I know I was theorizing that too, because I mean, it just kind of like, I wasn't super hyped about it. Like, oh, who is it? It was just like, yeah, could be Reed. That'd be cool. I mean, there's a bunch of scientists in the Marvel universe. It could be anyone, whatever. Like, that's just what I thought. And then even then though, like, you get the review. It's like, yeah, it's just a friend. And people are still going crazy. Some people are saying like, oh, but where did she get the truck? Maybe the guy that built it was Reed Richards, and like we still don't know who the friend is exactly. And I know someone else theorized, which I wouldn't mind this theory to be true, which is that the woman that went up to her and they were talking about like, oh, we're like thank you for your loyalty. It's like, yeah, we're loyal to you too. Some people are guessing like, oh, that's a Skrull. Like, it's the girl from the Marvel movies. I wouldn't be against it. Like, I'm not against any theory.
Right. And we're not against theorizing in general. I think here's the point. I think that, and just to bring it home with what you were saying, theorizing is great. I think it's the sign of a healthy show and the life that it's breeding off. But, and this is the difference, don't be upset at the show for not doing for what you predicted was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if, and we can definitely retrace her steps, if that was never really teased as a big moment. And maybe it was just what was being hyped by fandom in general. It's fun to theorize. It's perfectly fine to do that. But do not fault the creators of the show for not fulfilling your own fan theory. That's the key here. And don't be upset. Like, don't say that Marvel had us. No, you had yourself. That's how this thing works.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
I mean, it's the truth. And me personally, I never put much stock in it. I didn't care. I just thought, hey, The Mandalorian did this. Maybe that was my fault for thinking the show was as stupid as The Mandalorian, for just like going out there. However, I have seen some people backtrack a little bit and say maybe it's still Reed Richards, and maybe that major that Monica met up with, was a way to placate us, the audience, to kind of keep us off our tracks. Sure, maybe. I don't care.
Yeah.
Maybe is a better answer. I don't care. I mean, like that's far and away away from anything that I'm interested in. But like, I don't know, guys. Again, it seems like this was nothing.
Her bringing up her friend was a way for her to go back to the Hex. Like, that was all that was intended. And if she just decided to, I mean, I know this is what she did in the end, but like, if she just randomly decided, you know what, I'm just gonna go back in, that would have been bad, because people would have gone like, oh, anyone could just walk in now? Like, there's no, like,
well, I think
consequences to those types of actions.
I want to put a barrier on it, right?
Yeah, and so it's kind of, well, not even just a barrier, just like, why would anyone be crazy enough
to go through that?
Without any kind of protection, because you don't know the effects. Again, when she came out, we saw that something weird was going on with her. They needed to retake some tests and all that. So it's like, it wouldn't make sense story-wise for anyone to just go in. So she brings up her friend. Could have been anyone, didn't have to be anyone important. It's just we needed a way to go back in. And when that failed, she went, fuck it. And then now, and I think they just needed it to be kind of heroic instead of crazy or something. I don't know. Whatever. But like, yeah. She goes through the hex.
That was a good moment for her.
It was cool.
You know, I think that look, in whatever small way, that's what you got to do to build out the character. You make the scene much more interesting. You know, you didn't have to do it, but yeah, Monica, you know, trying to ram through it, her rover didn't work, and she just, you know what? Fuck it. I have to go through this. I have to help Wanda. She does a noble thing. No one else would have done that. And we can talk about in a bit, you know, how she transforms as she gets to the Hex. But I think overall, like, that's what ultimately is what is, you know, pertinent to the moment, not so much who it is that she's speaking with or who her contact was. I also have to say, Reed Richards isn't a woman, right?
No.
Okay, I don't know the Fantastic Four character. That's why I'm asking for clarification.
Oh, you really? Okay.
No, seriously. I've never seen the movies. I don't know the comics. I'm only asking for clarification because when she mentioned this friend, this aerospace scientist, back in episode 4, I do believe she said she or her are the pronouns she used for this person, which would seemingly point to this major that she met up with this episode as the person she was referring to all along, not Reed Richards, who would be a male. Does that track?
Okay. Yeah. No, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I don't remember her saying she or anything, but actually, I just remembered, though, some people wanted to go crazy enough to believe that it was Reed Richards, that they said, oh, maybe that's just how they talk to each other, that she says she, but really it's a he. I know, I just remembered that, and I'm not kidding you. I heard something like that. It would confuse the hell out of me when I heard it. I'm like, you're reaching. You're so fucking reaching. Wow. And so, but yeah, Reed Richards is a guy. He's Mr. Fantastic, the stretchy dude.
Okay. Yeah. I have never seen those movies, so that's why I had to ask for confirmation. Like, I don't know the characters there. All I know is at some point there was Michael B. Jordan, Kate Mara, then it was Chris Evans, but those are not the same movie. It's, yeah. No. So what did you make of Monica's transformation, that whole sequence? First of all, I think it looked visually stunning. Great job really cool. Great job on the VFX. I think it was great. A nice added, I guess, benefit to the momentous occasion, I guess you could say, because you had in all the different voiceovers. Again, if you watch the show with subtitles, or closed captioning, you could, because, you know, the sound editing and everything, obviously those voices are not like super loud, but if you want to know what was being said like 100% clearly, turn on closed captioning and you see that there were like moments, mostly from Captain Marvel, but you have like, you know, her mom Maria, Carol Danvers, and I think Nick Fury also were thrown in there as the voices that she was hearing as she was pushing through the Hex. And I mean, it was pretty obvious because we had discussed the fact before that she is a character in the comics that has powers. And so they had also teased that, you know, going back and forth through the Hex can rewrite your biology or the DNA on a cellular level, whatever it is you want to say. And we had talked about, obviously, before the fact, that maybe this is how they introduce mutants. And you know what? I think this sequence kind of proves you right, David, what you said last week, that no, that I don't think that's what it was. It may just be this whole setup of the fact that the Hex changes you as you go back and forth through, you know, in and out of it. It may have just ultimately been, no, this is how Monica Rambeau gets her powers. This is not how all mutants happen out of nowhere, but this is Monica Rambeau's origin story. What did you make of that sequence?
It was nice. A little bit anticlimactic for me, just because I don't know. I feel like if you're gonna like really introduce her powers, it could have been a lot more emotional in a way. I don't know. It didn't really hit me that hard. It was cool and all. I liked the visuals.
Yeah, I get you.
I like that she's sort of struggling of becoming her Hex self from before to trying to stay herself. Like, that was cool and all. Right. And then I like it when she comes out and like you see what she's seeing, and it's just like it's all tripping on acid type of thing. But yeah, it was cool. And then what really got me, like, I think my favorite part though was when she confronts Wanda and like she has her in the air. Yeah. And when she throws her down. And that's when her powers like activated a little bit, and like she, I guess, protected herself from the floor. That's when I was like, oh, that's badass. Okay, like we're getting cool, or it's getting cool now.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. Like I ultimately was like not emotionally moved. I'm not sure if it was going for that, because I don't know. Was it going for that? Like,
I don't think so. It's just. Like, it's this weird thing of, like, I saw it coming. Like, her powers were getting there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm surprised that it was this way, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree with you. Let's get to, Darcy and Vision here. What a hoot. Yeah. From the beginning.
So that you're complimenting Elizabeth on her comedy here, but like for me it was Vision. I love the first lines that he said when he sees Darcy, and he just goes, we locked eyes." Like, I don't know, I just find it funny, like the way he's trying to interact with her. Yeah, it's just it was awkward, but it's so funny.
Oh my god!
And then I find it so smart that when we last saw her, she was handcuffed to the car.
Yeah.
And then when we see her, she's still, like, she's chained to the car now. I thought that was funny. And then the other part that was funny is that, so when she went to go save Vision before the Hex, she punched an agent. That's the same guy that she punched again in this episode.
Yeah. I thought that was really cool. Fuck him. Yeah. Who cares? Fuck him. He's an asshole. No, that moment was, again, one of the funniest moments in the show, because it was just delivered so well with Paul Bettany just like, we saw each other last night, we locked eyes, and then like we know what he means, but from an outside perspective, that really, really came off maybe the worst way possible. And Darcy is like without missing a beat, and this is where her like all her experience in sitcoms comes in handy. She's like, hard pass, and she just walks away because she obviously took that as like you know what it meant. Yeah. And then Vision kept following her, and he kept like trying to say and talk sense into her about all the things that happened. I mean, again, just wonderful lines like, fine, I'll go out with you, but I'm ordering the lobster. Just, great. And then of course Vision wakes her up and like, do you have, like, I have questions, and she's like, I have answers.
Barely.
And then she barely has answers. But then again, we forget, but there's an interesting comparison that has to be made, I think, between, for me, an interesting comparison in the sense that, how in Agent Coulson's case with season 7, he had all of Coulson's memories, but this is a new Coulson, and he had a very much like a story arc of who am I? What am I? This is a very like crisis, an identity crisis kind of a storyline back with S.H.I.E.L.D. And then with Vision here, we really do forget at times that this is kind of a different Vision in the sense that he doesn't remember anything before Westview. He doesn't remember the events of his own origin or how he died twice before getting to this place. So it's like, and he has this moment where he's talking with Darcy, and she's like trying to inform him of many of these things as possible. And he really comes to the conclusion that, all right, well, what am I now? Who am I now? Which is really interesting.
Yeah.
And it obviously, I think, was a lot more calmer and introspective of a realization of what he is than maybe perhaps we might have guessed earlier. I think many of us assumed that when Vision discovers what he is, he might... Well, I guess to an extent, there's still that question. What is he? Is he literally a walking corpse? Has he put that together yet? I'm not sure. But we had assumed that when that occasion were to come, he would have been horrified. And I guess to an extent, he had already spent a couple of episodes being a little bit miffed at Wanda, if not entirely confused at the situation of what was happening. But I think Kat Dennings and Paul Bettany made an amazing team. They were hilarious, but they also had some pretty, I would say, down-to-earth moments that landed with me. Mm-hmm. Like just that conversation between the two of them and him realizing what Wanda had been through. Perhaps that was what was making him a bit more understanding, is just the realization that Wanda had been through so much loss, is definitely grieving. He seemingly sees Wanda in a much more understanding position than he was beforehand, when he just saw Wanda doing bad things with manipulating everybody for seemingly no good reason. That was his previous point of view. Mm-hmm. I love the fact that they get away in a van when he can just fly. I mean, it's hilarious to me. It's just one of those like sitcom tropes, but you know, their escape was so much fun. Oh God. The Paul Bettany mockumentary scenes. I mean, he's just sitting in a chair with the mic on, and like, you know, he's saying to us, like, I think Wanda is, you know, intentionally trying to keep me from getting home. You know, on the road with Darcy, they are interrupted, I think, countless times by people who are trying to cross the road. Really strange happenings. Some people suspected perhaps it was somebody else who was trying to keep Vision away. Maybe not Wanda. Although Wanda did seem to be pissed off at Vision, so I wouldn't doubt that it was Wanda maybe trying to keep him away.
I don't think so, because again, she made a point that he has like free will now in this world. So I don't think it was her. It could have. It probably was Agatha.
Right. Yeah, that would seem to make more sense, and we have a lot more to say on her when we get to that point. Mm-hmm. No, but go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, like, what I like about this, like that whole sequence with them too. Mm-hmm. The first thing, again, it's like Vision is such a good guy, but like the first question he wants to know is, "Are my kids safe?" And it's so good. It's kind of weird though, because like that was his first question, but then Wanda is just kind of like, "Bye, children."
Yeah. So, well, I mean, she's in a bad place.
Yeah, it's understandable. I don't know. It's just funny and weird. But yeah, no, I agree with everything that you were saying of how he has this big question of like, who the heck is he? He's probably a bit more understanding about Wanda and her situation and all that, and like, and again, like bringing back up to this whole beginning, middle, end of the episode. That scene's really cool, and part of the reason why it doesn't really bother me as much of this whole runtime is that I'm hoping that we are gonna get a really good conclusion. I can definitely see them both coming together in the end. Him realizing like who he is.
It's within reach.
It's within reach.
It's within reach, dude. But tell me you're not feeling the same anxiety. It's like we're so close. But the closer we get to it, the more anxious we get about how they're really going to deliver on all of it, you know?
I know. Oh my God. It's just so weird though too, because like there's 2 episodes left, right?
Yeah.
And since they're so short, it's just kind of like, what's going to happen? Like,
as we said before, is there just the slightest bit, and I don't know how much longer they really would be at this point, but I mean, if they've been 30 minutes, maybe since, and I believe we're done with the sitcom. I think we're done with the sitcoms where we did the 2010s, right?
Yeah, I just realized that too. It's like, I think we're going to be done with the sitcom stuff. Like,
there's nothing left to cover, so I guess you could make the argument that would leave the room for longer episodes.
Not just that, but like just getting straight to the point. Because again, the reason why there's just wasn't much in this episode because they were still trying to stick with the whole sitcom type of thing. And so I don't know, like I think because of Agatha's reveal and Hayward is just like trying to destroy the Hex, like I think we're just gonna go straight into the action in a way.
Perhaps.
So
well, I mean, we're deep in the third act at this point, but I wanted to finish off or continue.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, I'm saying this, but like this is probably like the third time that I've said this, that we're just gonna get straight to the point now, or whatever, or straight to the story, straight to the reveal, or straight to the plot. I've said that like 3 times, and I've been wrong every single time. So, who knows?
Yeah. A couple of things I wanted to say real quick. No, Paul Bettany is an amazing talent. An amazing talent, and I think there is every reason for why people are just praising him. He's great every single week, and especially in the comedic moments, like just him in the Vision makeup, sitting in a chair doing a mockumentary interview. You know, him getting up and like, what am I doing? This is absurd. And then he gets up and he gets away from them. But I definitely, oh my God. That look at the camera, it felt like a lot like Jim Halpert from The Office. It was just like, it was amazing, man. It's actually, I think it's behind me on my TV monitor, so you can see the moment right there.
Okay.
Vision looking into the camera.
Yeah.
So it's like great image. Again, though, I guess the awe moment of the week was Darcy saying, look, I don't know how any of this makes sense. I don't know how any of this ends. But one thing I know for a fact is your love for each other, Wanda and Vision, is real.
Yeah. That's nice.
And that's a nice feeling. But I have a sneaking suspicion we're not going to have that feeling for that much longer, are we?
I'm hopeful. That's all we can do.
Hope springs eternal, as they say. But oh man. So then we get to Monica storming in to Wanda's house, and Wanda's like, the fuck are you doing here? She's like, how did you get past all of everything? No, we gotta get back. I'm sorry. I jumped the gun. We gotta go to the commercial.
Oh my God.
Yes, that's a big thing. That's a big deal.
Yeah. So right away, like, this is a commercial I see all the fucking time now on television, and it's annoying, honestly. Like, they're saying, like, oh, take this pill, it'll help you out. You might want to commit suicide. You might get diarrhea from it. I don't know, but like, just take it. It may make you
feel worse, but just take it.
Yeah, but then obviously, like, it had to do with Wanda, and it's like, I can't remember the exact words of the commercial, but it was basically like, do you ever feel like you're not part of the center of the universe or something? I don't know what the fuck it was.
Well, you're not part of the real world.
Yeah.
You're so disconnected from reality, maybe like that.
Mm-hmm. And then the big theory people were saying is that the name Nexus, it had to do with, like, what is it? The Nexus of time or something that basically had to do with the multiverse. Is what people were theorizing.
There's a lot of things. Let me start off with the theory that, well, it's not really a theory, it's just a fact, but it's something that also has the same name. It has some precedence in the MCU, but I don't feel it has any bearing at all with what's going on. Mm-hmm. And what I initially remembered is that Nexus was like an internet mainframe that Tony Stark used in Age of Ultron to try and look for ways to block Ultron out of the internet. And that happened to be the movie where Wanda Maximoff made her debut. So that was my first indication when I watched this, but I don't feel that's what it is, clearly, because there actually is a lot to suggest that, and I think these theories may actually be spot on, considering that we know that this show is supposed to at some point introduce the multiverse. We're getting close to the end, right? So this Nexus evidently has a huge foundation in the Marvel Comics as the Nexus point. Like, the Nexus is apparently a gateway to different realities.
That's what I was trying to talk about.
And we see perhaps a set piece in this episode toward the end that looks eerily similar to what a gateway would be like, with many particular doors that could open in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
Also, and I didn't catch this, I thought she was taking Tylenol. Getting back to when Monica bursted into Wanda's home. But it turns out that Wanda was taking those Nexus antidepressant pills.
What the fuck, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I didn't catch that, obviously.
Yeah.
That's like, and I believe that's almost immediately after the commercial. But yeah, Monica busts in. And Wanda is like, bitch, I thought I told you to get out of here. And, with her magic, she picks her up like a rag doll, throws her around. Wanda seems to be entirely convinced that, Pietro was also part of Sword's doing. Clearly it wasn't. She tries to slam Monica to the ground, and Monica stops that. She does the classic superhero pose. But she seemingly stops that with her newfound powers, which I don't really know what they are. I don't think there really was enough for us to get a clear sense of what her power skill is, but okay. But I guess she's strong enough now to maybe defend herself at least from Wanda, but Wanda definitely was taken aback by what she saw. And the moment, and this is a great moment here that follows, where Monica is, this is the moment that we had been expecting the entire series since Monica's introduction. And that is, Monica using the shared experience that she and Wanda have. I lost the closest person to me too. And I'm also having a hard time dealing with it. But I'm tired of it because it's my truth and I have to embrace it. I have to accept it. And she's getting through to her. Mm-hmm. She's getting through to her. The same way Vision also was getting through to her a few episodes back when they were interrupted by Pietro. Damn, Monica was literally about to solve this entire shit. She was that close.
Yeah.
And then we cut to Agnes looking through her window. And that's when we all kind of like,
fuck.
Agatha, or Agnes, shall we say at this point, walks up, cuts Monica off as she's about to clinch victory. She takes Wanda with her. And Monica is like yelling at Wanda, "You have to take this down, otherwise Hayward will burn it to the ground." I think she's being real there. I think Hayward's about to burn this place to the ground.
For sure.
It's like he's done. And then I have to think on some level this was entirely intentional. Wanda literally threatens Monica to like, don't make me hurt you. The cat meme, the pointing at the cat meme. Like, you know which one? The pointing at the cat?
Yeah.
This is
yes. That's a great catch, honestly. Wow.
That's what I thought too, and everybody seemed to like catch onto it pretty quickly. I thought that was hilarious. It had to have been influenced by that because it's just so like, it's so perfect. But before we move on with Agnes and Wanda in the house, Monica made a great point. Wanda had every opportunity to kill Monica right then and there. She couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't want to. Monica says to her, "Don't let Hayward make you the villain." And she says, "What if I already am?" But that wasn't really convincing, right? That was like a little bit defeatist. And Wanda's going through some shit this episode. She's fucking taking antidepressants. Like, she is literally at her lowest moment here because this is supposed to be her fantasy. This is supposed to be her happily ever after. And all of it is coming crashing down around her to the point where the interviewer in this mockumentary style sitcom even asks her, "Do you think maybe that's what you deserve?" So that was pretty fucked up. I mean, I don't disagree with the with the question being asked, but that's some pretty fucked up shit. Like, Wanda's going through a lot here, and she had every reason to get rid of Monica or hurt her, and she still didn't.
That was such a freaky moment.
Wasn't it?
You think you deserve it? It's like, the fuck, dude? Like, the hell? And she's just like, you're not supposed to talk. And I love they did the whole like cut to commercial type of thing. That was great. No, but yeah, I did like that we finally got what I theorized was that Monica was going to break through to Wanda.
Yeah, you were the first one. I think you were the very first one to like call that from the beginning. Props on that.
Yeah.
Only it didn't work.
It almost did. We were right there.
It was gonna work.
Yeah.
It was gonna work. And then
now I think Vision is the one that's gonna get through to her in the end. And somehow I think Monica's gonna be part of the big fight in the end, while Wanda and Vision like settle their whole thing.
Yeah. So then we get to Agnes's house, and a lot of creepy things start to happen off the bat. She notices a fly, a really weirdly colored, well, maybe not even a fly, just a bug, a weirdly colored bug. Some unsettling music starts to play. Wanda realizes the twins are not there. She asks where they are, and Agnes was like, and you see it cut to her, and she's very interesting when she says it. Oh, I think they're just, playing in the basement or something. She walks off camera.
It's already bad. It's like they're in the basement.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to backtrack here. I'm sorry. I'm forgetful here, but I forgot to say about the sequence that happens with the twins and Agnes at the home, which is also hilarious because like they're like, Agnes, is our mom crazy? And she's like, no, she's super mom. And then it cuts to her like, I mean, Ralph says I sugarcoat things, but what am I supposed to tell a 10-year-old kid that their mom is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs? I mean,
it's good,
hilarious.
She's great.
Great delivery. But more importantly, obviously, clearly what was being teased with Billy is something to do with his power set. And then and Billy like says, I like it here, Agnes. It's quiet. You're quiet, Agnes. On the inside. And I really do wonder what Agnes thought of that moment. Like, I don't know what the look on her face suggested to you. I wonder if perhaps she was like, maybe it's time to pull the lever on this thing right now before we get too far.
Yeah, it could be that. Actually, I didn't think of that. I didn't think of that, but once you said it, like, oh, yeah, it kind of hit me. My thought was she thought she was just with the demon child or something. Just like, because how the hell do you respond to that? It's like, you're quiet on the inside. Like, the fuck do you mean?
Yeah, that's interesting. So Wanda, cutting back to Wanda realizing her kids are not there, she goes down to the basement. Interesting moment here, as she sees a couple of weird vines in a dark doorway. When I was watching this in real time with Peter and Alexis, Peter said Stranger Things. Because the opening was a little bit like, I guess the
upside down.
The upside down, or at least the aesthetic of it, perhaps. But if you notice, as Wanda is walking through that, the aspect ratio changes back to widescreen, as if like we've left the sitcom and we're now, I guess, in reality here. I believe that's what the implication is. And I want to say that it goes back to the aspect ratio it was when we cut to the the musical sequence at the end of the episode. I can't say for sure. I have to go back and look at it. So this was the moment seemingly everybody was waiting for.
Mm-hmm.
Wanda walks in, and she basically walks into a witch's coven. I don't know how else to describe what we saw.
Yeah.
But it definitely could be the gateway, the Nexus gateway that was perhaps being teased in that commercial. And then Agnes, with Senior Scratchy in her arms, comes down, and she reveals herself as Agatha Harkness. Pleasure to finally meet you. Han is amazing. Catherine Hahn is great.
I am loving all the love that she's getting.
Yeah.
Recently, like, I don't know, it just kind of like, I understand, but it just came out of nowhere. Everyone was just going,
it's
like,
true.
Catherine Hahn, best thing ever, and all that. I'm like, what the hell?
It's like all of a sudden people realize that she was in great things. Like, you know, people forget she was into the Spider-Verse. I forgot that she was in Parks and Recreation. Like, yeah, she's great.
Mm-hmm.
And she's doing an amazing job with this performance. So, I mean, you go, girl. She's great.
Cool.
And then she reveals herself, and she tells Wanda, "Did you think you were the only magical person in here or in this town?" And then with her magic, I think it's purple, she plays a musical sequence that's I think inspired by the Munsters. I feel Agatha All Along, which is currently #1 on the iTunes charts for the soundtrack genre. And people have been raving about this. I'll admit, I've had it kind of stuck in my head. It is an amazing sequence. Catherine Hahn also does provide the vocals. It's been Agatha all along. David, it's been Agatha all along. I have to ask you. Well, what did you think of that moment? You just gotta, just tell me what you thought.
I loved it. It was just so funny. Before the musical sequence, did you notice the book? And what was your first thought?
I wanted to get to it. We're gonna get to it.
Okay.
Don't worry, we're gonna get to that.
Okay,
I'll talk about the sequence.
Okay. So I like the first thing you notice is that she literally like flies down in, and you can see like part of her dress is all raggedy, like an actual witch. So I'm kind of curious what her like real look is. I hope it's pretty cool.
Right.
The music, it was so great. It just reminded me so much of like Halloween and everything.
Oh yeah, this has to be a new Halloween bop when we get to it.
Yeah. And I just like that they sort of in an instant told us like, yeah, this is what she was doing this whole time and everything. Like, we don't need like this long ass explanation. Obviously we're getting an explanation of like how she got there, how she know about Wanda or anything like that. But at least from everything inside, we know that she was a part of it. So
that musical sequence, Agatha All Along, is every reason why this show works and every reason why this show is great.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a reveal, it's how it handles an amazing reveal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, it was a home run as far as I'm concerned. Beautiful. Perfect. And, when she's like, and I killed Sparky too, and then she cuts to the witch laugh. Perfect. Loved it. Oh my God. Jesus, man. This is the great stuff we're looking at here. I'm obsessed, clearly. I love it. But now come, obviously, all of the implications of everything we saw and all the different theories. But let's take them on one by one here. Where are the kids?
I was
so scared. I was so scared there was going to be a reveal akin to oh, they're dead, or they were never really there.
Oh, I doubt it.
I hope so, because like I really have become invested in them as a family, and I would be devastated if something bad happened to them. You know.
Mm-hmm. I'm willing to bet that she turned them into bunnies too.
Oh, okay.
Why not? But yeah, I don't think they're gonna like show that they're dead. The whole never existed in the first place. That's not something that's like she'll tell Wanda or like she'll reveal to Wanda. I feel like that's just something in the very end where she has to like let go of everything. Who knows? Yeah.
All right. Next thing here is, so, and this is a big one. I guess this makes a lot of sense in terms of what we saw of Agatha last week in the Halloween episode. And I think perhaps this seemingly confirms a lot of the theories that Agatha, was trying to get Vision and Wanda to make the kids. And then as soon as they came into the picture, she began to drive them apart. In the sense that well, yeah, she began to drive them apart, and then also when things were, because this is what happens when she is with Herb back in episode 3. That's the beginning of where Vision begins to really question where things are going to go on. Agatha pretty much instigated that. In episode 5, the moment Vision was cracking through Wanda, she sends Pietro. She's revealed to be the one that sends Pietro, not Mephisto or somebody else. She also ends up being the reason Vision goes to the barrier. She literally is conveniently on Alice Avenue, which at that point was at the border of the Hex. And she was there, based on what we saw in the, Agatha all along, to push Vision out there. And then you could also say that the entire episode, she was the one that was keeping Vision away from the house.
Yeah, that's basically it. That's actually really cool. But I think I theorized from the beginning that everyone theorized, my bad. Everyone theorized from the beginning that she wanted the kids for sure. But I think that,
for what purpose though, we still don't know.
So this is my giant theory, is that I think she wants to have the Mind Stone again.
Okay.
Or not again, but like she wants to remake the Mind Stone. Because again, there's still that bit of footage in the trailer where the Mind Stone is reforming. And I think that's what she wanted. The thing though is that someone told Wanda about it, that she could probably reform it. Or maybe she had the idea herself, who knows? And it failed. Maybe she's still not strong enough, who knows? And my theory is that during their time in the Hex, Agatha was absorbing Wanda's power, which is why her purple powers looks exactly like hers. The more she absorbs, the more it looks like her powers, the more she's getting more powerful. And so, because that was one thing people were talking about, is that like, how the heck are her powers similar to Wanda's? If she got her powers from the Mind Stone. The thing though, even if she absorbs Wanda's power, she still probably wouldn't be strong enough. So I think the children are there for like absorption of more power. As like it's kind of like Ego, the Living Planet, trying to do with Peter. And so that was just my theory, is that she was hoping Wanda could remake the stone, failed, so she set up a plan, and her plan was to absorb it, her power, to make it her own, but she needs someone else. And that's where the kids come in.
Right. There is some speculation as there always is, or theorizing, shall we say. That's the better word for it.
Mm-hmm.
That Evan Peters is playing her son. There have also been obviously theories that he's playing Nightmare, another character from the comics. That's working with Agatha Harkness. There has to be, I feel, something involving her son for what she's doing here, because there are a couple of questions that I still have. So the footage that we're seeing shows her arriving, but the hex already was standing. So she didn't cause the hex to happen. It was already there. She just arrived. Right?
Yeah.
And if Wanda can't remember how any of this started, you see, there's still some questions there that still are highly suspect. I think, if Agatha didn't do this, because it's funny because like the song is Agatha all along. I don't know if that means Agatha was the one that caused this. I mean, she definitely caused some trouble, but she wasn't the one that instigated this, was she? I don't think that was the implication.
It's hard to tell because, again, she says that line of "nice to finally meet you, Wanda," meaning it could just be that like she's finally herself, or something like that. But
yeah.
I don't know. It's really hard to tell.
Because that's still the question. Like that doesn't answer the question as to how the hex started, how Wanda was even able to do that, or how she was able to bring Vision back to life. Those questions are still on the board. And Agatha seemingly has no involvement with that.
I'm kind of worried next episode. Like, it's just going to be a flashback episode of like how this whole thing started. And I don't mind that in part of like we getting answers. I just I just don't like it because it's like it's literally stopping the plot to like reveal stuff, and oh god.
Yeah, I have that concern as well. I'm not so much concerned about I can definitely understand what makes you a little bit worried about that, because if it's all just reveal, you may have a feeling at the end of the episode feeling like, well, okay, but there's only one episode left. What are we doing here? Maybe that could happen. There's a good chance it's like a flashback episode, and it shows how all of this happened. That's not outside the realm of possibility. I'm gonna remain optimistic, and maybe they can definitely like make it fun. But again, flashback episodes are also kind of a sitcom trope here.
I guess. I mean, that's the thing, though. It's like, are they gonna keep going for the sitcom thing for a flashback, or
I mean, seemingly, if you're gonna do a whole episode just flashing back, I don't know. I don't know any of this, to tell you the truth. My bigger thing is there's still something that has yet to be revealed here. Something big. And the closing sequence would seemingly suggest that Agatha is the big bad here. What do you think? You think it is exactly what we're being told, or do you think there's a little bit of a misdirection going on with all of this reveal of Agatha business?
You mean like if she is the big bad, or is there still more?
Yeah.
I think she is, just because you need, I feel like a Mephisto type villain. That's something that you reveal from the very beginning. This is like he's the type, especially like on a show, not a movie.
Right.
That's the type where you kind of go like, where you see the henchman talking to someone, you're like, who is it? And then you hear a dark, ominous voice that's like, you don't do my bidding, I will blah, 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 blah. And all that. Like, that's the kind of villain I see Mephisto. I haven't read the comics, I could be wrong, but like, that's who I see. He's the literal devil in this universe.
Right.
You know? Right. And so to just reveal a villain in close to your ending, I don't think you're going to have much reveals afterwards, you know?
there's a risk there. There's a danger there,
and again,
kind of ruining everything.
People keep like just adding more and more stuff to it. It's like, oh, this is gonna be the multiverse. This is gonna be the beginning of mutants. This is gonna be the beginning of a big bad. There's another big bad here. It's like, you guys are like adding way too much stuff. Like, I don't even think a 20 to 25 episode series could do this type of thing. Fucking The Flash could barely do it. The second season of The Flash brought up the multiverse, and the only villain was like, it really was like a B character villain for him, Zoom, almost.
Right.
So, I don't know.
No, that is a perfectly good thing to bring up, and that is for people to manage their expectations. That people may just be expecting way too much that the show maybe was never actually going to address.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're mostly right. Only because, I mean, it seems obvious, but I still feel there are other questions that need to be answered. They can easily be answered, but like in terms of like how all of this even started, and I am of the mind that we're going to see some of that, I think, this week, because as in the trailer, there's also even a sequence where we see Wanda and Vision for the first time reuniting in the sitcom world. So we may know more by this time next week in regards to that. But yeah, that's a lot of interesting stuff. And they'll also have the post-credit scene with Monica and with fake Pietro. Where are you now with who the fuck Evan Peters is playing?
Henchman? I don't know. Probably. Like, I think for sure it's confirmed now that he is not from some other universe.
You feel that way for sure, even though the gateway that they were at could potentially open the multiverse. People, again, I know you just said that people are putting too much, but I've seen these theories where like, oh, but you see, because of the mention of the Nexus gateway, this could still be Quicksilver from the X-Men movies.
I don't know. My first thought when she goes down to the basement, it wasn't, oh, portal to another universe. It was just secret lair.
Right.
Secret creepy lair. Like, that's all it is.
Right.
So, yeah. I think he's just a henchman at this point. I don't think he's from another universe.
If you're right, I know a lot of people are gonna be fucking pissed.
That's their fault.
That's
again. Congratulations, you played. I mean, no, honestly, actually, no. This was Marvel's fault. Never mind. This was Marvel's fault. They were like, "Hey, look who it is," you know. But
they played you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as we begin to wrap up, there's a couple more things to address here. The question you asked about a certain book. What was your question?
What did you think it was? The book. What was your first thought when seeing it?
My initial thought was, huh. And then I was, no. No. It's not. I mean, let me say this. You and I think, as avid fans of a show that seemingly keeps being brought up, and we will, so tough, called Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., know that a huge MacGuffin, if you will, in the storyline of that series was a magical book called The Darkhold that was also seemingly used in The Runaways, which was also part of that universe. And The Darkhold basically was, honestly, like, there's not a better way, but a magical ancient book of evil that showed you how to do whatever you want. It's like making a deal with the devil kind of a thing. Like, it gives you everything you want, but it seemingly everybody that used it on that show had a pretty fucking bad ending for them. Mm-hmm. If it is the Darkhold, big stretch if it is, because I mean, again, as fans of S.H.I.E.L.D., we're just very reluctant to say that anything is connected to the show because of how poorly it's been treated across the board. But if it is, the Darkhold, it has the ability to show people, like the Hex, for example, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It also would make sense why Agatha, a witch, would have that book. So there's that. A couple of things to point out. Obviously, the production design of that book doesn't look like the Darkhold that we saw in the other shows. Of course, that could easily be explained with, well, it's a magical book and it can change its appearance. Who cares? Sure, you could say that. It also very well could be she's a witch. They have books. They have magical books. I mean, it also just could be any random book that witches have in their coven.
Mm-hmm.
Some people even said that it could be one of those books that Doctor Strange had.
I was going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a picture of, like, there are the ones with, like, a light in the front of the book. Right underneath it, there was one missing, and people are like, oh, it could be that one, or blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So, yeah. No, but my first thought was the Darkhold.
Yeah.
And I was just like...
Yeah. We weren't the only ones. Yeah. We weren't the only ones. People were putting that stuff out there. There have been many articles written about those references. It wasn't the only Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. reference. Well, I say that loosely. Mm-hmm. Loosely, like, these are presumed references when they may in fact not be. Like, a lot of the show has imagery that could be read into far too much. I know a lot of people were like saying, oh, Darcy had a hula girl on the, in the van. It's like, well, so did Daisy, in the Zephyr in the bus originally, or she had a hula girl in her van that, she took with her where she went. So, I mean, also those are fairly common. So, I mean,
yeah,
I don't know if that's
it's a common thing in vans. So
yeah, Marvel is not everything has to be a reference. That's the thing, right? Mm-hmm. Like, people have to just remember that. I mean, it could be, but it most likely isn't. It doesn't really have any bearing on the show, it seems like. I mean, I guess it's possible that it could be the Darkhold, David.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting it.
I mean, like, yeah, like you said, the Darkhold could for sure reveal how to bring back Vision.
That's true.
Bring the multiverse and all that. But they could just make
especially if we feel that Mephisto is no longer in play. And that was questionable to begin with. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people brought it up, and honestly, but all of those seemingly have been absorbed with Agatha all along, so it's looking like just Mephisto was never in play for this show. Again, that was something that the fans were putting on there. You have to explain how this happened in the first place. That the Darkhold could be a reason for how this happened. Mm-hmm. But what it's doing in Agatha's possession, where we seemingly are of the mind that she did not start this, again, questionable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're just gonna have to wait and see.
Yeah. I think we're about done. Is there anything we've missed, you feel, as far as this episode is concerned?
Nah, I don't think so.
So, all right, so let's get into you. I think you already mentioned it. What are your worries for how things are going to wrap up here? What do you not want to happen? Let me ask that better of you.
I just don't want like a super fast sequence of events that just like, all right, we're getting to the end of this and this and this and this and this, and like I just don't want it to move super fast, because it'll feel like a bittersweet ending almost. I know I said that I was kind of worried about this, but like I don't mind it in a way. But the next episode, I feel like it's gonna be a flashback episode that'll reveal everything, or maybe it could be like maybe 5 to 10 minutes of it, and then the rest will go back to our present. I don't know.
Maybe.
Who knows? But yeah, yeah. There's basically it. I want answers to some of these things, but I also don't want them to rush it. Really take their time with it.
Yeah. I think look, endings are tough.
Mm-hmm.
They're really tough to stick the landing, but they can be done, and they can be done really well. And I think it's fair to say, from my perspective, from my standpoint, I have been, my expectations for what this show has delivered so far have been blown out of the water. I secretly hoped that this show would be great, but I didn't let myself have too high expectations. But from the beginning, they were great. And every single week, my love for this series has only grown. And they've also committed to the sitcom format, to seemingly the chagrin of many people who don't like the fact that they did this in the beginning. But hey, they can go fuck themselves, and seem like only because, hey, for once they listened to what I wanted, and they delivered on that. And I think it ended up doing wonders for the show. So every step of the way, it hasn't been perfect. As I've mentioned at the top, I'm not really all that excited about the sword stuff. I'm enjoying it, I'm liking it, but not as much as the other stuff that I'm getting from the show. So there's that. I have to remain optimistic that we're going to bring it all home, and we're going to have a solid conclusion here. Because, man, wouldn't it suck if it didn't?
Yeah.
And the last thing I need is a sour taste in my mouth at the end of this.
Mm-hmm.
That's the last thing we need. Please, God, don't let this happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to our little podcast out there. We hope you're enjoying WandaVision. We hope you're enjoying our recap of the show. Thank you, David, for being here. And always have a good time talking with you about all the different theories and what we saw on this episode. On these episodes of WandaVision. And we hope that you all will stay tuned for the final 2 installments and for all of our programming here on Red Spotlight Entertainment. Anywhere you listen to podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Castbox, YouTube, Google, and now iHeartRadio. Every single Sunday, sometimes Thursdays, and sometimes other days. Stay tuned. Stay here under the spotlight, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.